be filming this, don't worry. Hi, welcome to the Scott Huber Memorial Shakespeare Speakers Series with a whole lot of S's going on in it. Scott was a wonderful part of the festival for many years, and he lives on through having this speaker series named for him. He always used to introduce the plays and the speakers by saying, Shakespeare, full of cliches, that's all he seems to write. All things that you've heard a million times before. Well, you'll realize you actually know a lot more of this play than you might think you do through the course of what I'm doing here. And who am I? Well, I'm your speaker this evening. My name is Philip Blue Owl Hooser. I am an actor, director, playwright, gadabout. I got all of my theatrical training at the UMKC Theater Department, which is, yay, save UMKC Theater, currently under attack because of budgets. You'll see signs like there's one over there, there was one over there. Save UMKC Theater. Hi, there's my commercial for this evening. Pardon? Yes, there's budgets are being cut maniacally, I would say. So, here is my little chat for you this evening. Here's the situation. A young prince's father, the king, obviously, has died. The prince should become king, but he doesn't. Instead, his uncle does become king and seizes power. Then the dead king appears as a ghost, tells his son that his uncle, the new leader, has murdered him, and he makes his son swear that he will get revenge for this murder. Instead, even though the land is threatened by outside forces, the prince spends his time with two strange and comical friends, even in exile, even as all of this is going on and everything is basically at a standstill until the prince finally returns and decides he must take action. That's not my phone. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that this plot sounds familiar to you because Nance and Wanya! It's the Lion King and Hamlet. Basically, two stories with the same skeletal structure, just covered with different skin. One is considered one of the greatest tragedies of all time. The other one is a musical comedy for children. Literary-wise, of course, in literary terms, a comedy is a type of dramatic work that is amusing or satirical in tone, with a triumph over unpleasant circumstances resulting in a happy or successful conclusion. Ladies and gentlemen, I aim to show you that Hamlet is a comedy. Look, I know, it's one of the four great tragedies, the four pillars of tragedy that uphold the Shakespearean canon. And it's right there in the title, The Tragical History of Hamlet, Prince of Denmark. And yes, 8 of the 9 main characters in this play are dead by the end. But if you look at Shakespeare the right way, it's all comedy. Just sometimes people die. For too long, I believe, people have dwelt on Hamlet's darkness, his depression, his supposed madness. Well, I aim to reclaim Hamlet as comedian, and I'm doing it tonight. If people know nothing else about Hamlet or about this play, they know that he has a speech that begins to be... See, you're already right there. He's already talking about life and death, and in a lot of ways, there's nothing funnier than death. Or certainly nothing that we are able to make more jokes about because it's always out there, looming somewhere. That's why we have things that we call gallows humor, or black comedy, or whistling past the graveyard. And we know that Hamlet is funny from his very first line. Because his uncle, Claudius, refers to him as cousin and son. Cousin is, or sometimes abbreviated as cuz, is an all-purpose Elizabethan word meaning relative, but also refers to him as son because he is now his stepson. And Hamlet replies that Claudius is more than kin and less than kind. Great pun, right? Actually, it is. Because by saying that he is more than kin, he's saying now they're a bit too closely related rather than just being uncle and nephew. They're also stepfather and stepson. And He had also, kind means he has done some unkind actions of his sort. And if you read a lot of the Shakespeare works, and I do, no, you also run across the word kind meaning of nature or natural. And he's saying that Claudius has done unnatural things. He actually regards the remarriage of his mother to his brother's, her former husband's brother as an incestuous relationship is how he looks at it. And Hamlet shows this great sense of humor with that double entendre. And by sense of humor, I mean a set of emotional tools that he can use for getting through situations. That's how I think of a sense of humor is for people. It's a set of tools you can use to get through life. Sometimes it's comedy is one of those tools. Pardon me. And Hamlet is actually unique among the tragic heroes of Shakespeare for his sense of humor. Really, among the tragic heroes, usually there is a character in the play who is a fool. But in this play there is not, even though it takes place as court, there's not a person designated as fool. He fits in actually instead to a tradition that begins actually with Norse and Scandinavian literature called the hero as fool. And the fools, in case I haven't gone on long enough about them, are my favorite characters, especially in the tragedies, because they're able to bring some comedy, they're able to tell truth to power, and they're also able to make it very fun when they do. The hero as fool actually sort of gets one of its first big impacts in a little poem, saga, about a character whose name is Hamlet. Like Hamlet, but if you put the H at the end. And his name of that character comes from the Norse word that I butcher by saying it amlil, which means mad or not sane. And so the hero as fool of our story, of course, is Hamlet. He even jokes about the ghost that appears to him, his father's ghost, and that's supposed to be his own father, and he's making jokes about it. In fact, actually, Kronborg Castle, you should know, in Alsignor, where the play takes place, is said to be haunted. So it has this tradition, not necessarily by King Hamlet, Prince Hamlet's father. There wasn't much money for a lot of different names in those days. But it's said to be haunted by soldiers and shades. But anyway, back to our ghost. He wants Hamlet to swear that he will get revenge upon Claudius for this death. And he's the only one really who can. Who else is going to do it? This ain't Cabot Cove. There's no Jessica Fletcher coming to the rescue. Hamlet has to be the detective who solves this. And the voice of the ghost is said to come from under his feet when he's said to swear this, like the telltale heart only in the earth. And Hamlet says to this voice, "Well said, old mole, can work in the earth so fast." Mole under the earth, 6 feet under. Okay, it's not a great joke, but he's just been talking to a ghost, right? So his sense of humor may be a little off. He's trying to do what he can. Besides, if you just had a ghost say swear, you'd have a whole different idea of swearing. I know I would. And so, comedic tone, check. 3 more points. And so because of this, Hamlet is set on a course of revenge, which is why this is also referred to as fitting into the whole tradition of the revenge tragedy, which was a very popular type of presentation in Elizabethan times. I argue it's still with us today, a character seeking revenge through the course of action. I think of things like Die Hard, practically any Liam Neeson movie where someone gets kidnapped. He's out for revenge. This is a traditional story that stays with it. But before Hamlet can seek this vengeance, he has to make sure that what the ghost has said to him is true. Do you trust every ghost that comes your way? No, see? That's what Hamlet has to consider. Is the ghost telling me the truth, or could it be a demon who's been sent to tell me to do bad things? And so he sets out on a plan, and of course, a brilliant plan that it is, he decides he's going to act as if he is mad or insane, to wear the mask of antic disposition, as he says. He thinks he'll be better able to spy on other people because they'll be paying less attention to him. Little does he know he's going to be under surveillance by the NSA. the Norwegian spying alliance in this case, because Claudius, the king, gets everyone to follow Hamlet and report back on what he does. I even enlist two of Hamlet's childhood friends, my favorite characters in the play, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. They bring a lot of comedy to this play as well, partly because no one can tell which one is which. They have become actually so popular with some playwrights that there are two plays that are just about them. One of them by W.S. Gilbert of Anne Sullivan fame about them, and my absolute favorite by Tom Stoppard. The title itself has a bit of a spoiler alert. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. Great film version for that as well. So knowing that he's being watched, even by his childhood friends, Hamlet feels free to talk. And talk. And talk. 7 times in this play. He's the only one who talks for more than 20 lines. But he thinks he's being watched and overheard, so he talks about things like life and death and, oh, what a piece of work is man, and oh, that this too solid flesh should melt. And of course, that famous speech, which, if you take the words, to be or not to be, that is the question, whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, and you anagram them, mix them all up, you get. In one of the bard's best thought of tragedies, our insistent hero Hamlet queries on 2 fronts about how life turns rotten. I didn't make that up, but it's fabulous. And so I had to share it. Look, he's a very thoughtful guy. Someone asks him, "What do you read, my lord?" He replies, "Words, words, words." He knows words. He has the best words. He fears that he is too much in his head, that he thinks too much, rather than taking action, because he's at a time period where people think you should, act first and ask questions later. Certainly we don't do that today. We like deliberation and thoughtful preparation, right? And even Hamlet thinks that is a problem for him, that he doesn't take quick enough action. But he still decides to embrace being thoughtful. And he decides, gosh, you know what has power? Theater. You may think the same thing. You're here this evening, after all. And he decides to put on a play. And if you're going to do a play, then you're going to need actors, right? Actors have to be trained somewhere. Might as well be the UMKC Theater Department. Save UMKC Theater! So he puts on this play, and he says, the play is the thing wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king. He wants to see if Claudius really does feel guilty about this. So he rewrites The Murder of Gonzago in order to put in elements of his own father's death. And it works, because Claudius is suddenly stricken and can't go on watching the play. Hamlet has titled this play The Mousetrap. And it's so successful, it runs in London's West End for 65 years. I'm always glad when someone gets the really nerdy theater joke. Now look, there's also a problem with Hamlet. We know that he's mad at his mother because she has remarried so quickly, and to his uncle, and he thinks that's an incestuous relationship. But he also says to her, "Frailty, thy name is woman." He doesn't say, "Frailty, thy name is the queen," or Gertrude, or Mom. He says, "Woman." And he is often particularly cruel toward the girl that he has paired off with in this, Ophelia, involving really one of the crudest, most sexually slangy scenes in all of Shakespeare. It appears in this play in the way that he talks to Ophelia. I bet you want to know which scene it is, don't you? Modern audiences will often see this as misogynistic on Hamlet's part. Before you make up your mind, though, and you can make up your mind while you watch the play, I have some things for you to consider about that. This all happens while Hamlet is pretending to be insane. Maybe he's saying, only crazy people would hate on women this much. He also wants his mother to recognize that Claudius, not a nice guy. He's already been told that he was a murderer, and he doesn't like how Claudius has swooped in and taken all this power. Also, Ophelia has also been manipulated into spying on him. Just some things to consider. Please make up your own minds about that. Ophelia's father, of course, is Polonius, the counsel to the king, also the father of Hamlet's dear friend Laertes, as well as his girlfriend Ophelia. Hamlet spends a lot of his time mocking Polonius. He says that he is a tedious old fool and mocks him openly and mercilessly throughout the play. But the play also mocks Polonius, because really any judgment you see Polonius make in the course of this play, it's the wrong thing to do. Also, Polonius talks almost as much as Hamlet. For instance, and here's where I'm betting you know more of this play than you may think you do, he is the one who says, "Neither a borrower to thine own self be, though this be madness, yet there is method in it." We usually say method in his madness today. We also paraphrase things to clothes make the man, old friends are the best friends. Polonius goes on and on and on and on and on with all of these aphorisms that were cliches even then. And then, as he's still talking and yakking and yammering, he also says brevity is the soul of wit. He's no wit. This play takes a satirical tone toward him. Satirical tone. Check. 2 more to go. And so, when Polonius is hiding behind an arras, a sort of tapestry used as a door covering, Hamlet commits Polonius assault and stabs him in the arras. See, that's how you know Hamlet's smart and intelligent and very attractive, is that he makes puns, because some people may think it's a pun-pardonable sin, but not me. I love it. So after he has killed Polonius and stowed his body away, the king asks him where Polonius is, and Hamlet says he's at supper, not where he eats, but where he is eaten. Warm food, more jokes. And of course, you're going to have all these jokes about death. There's got to be a graveyard, right? So we have a scene with these 2 grave diggers, identified in the script as clowns. So this is the high point of all comedy in this play, and just when we need it the most. The clowns make light of serious situations as they are jesting about death. They create riddles about death. This is also the scene where we come across Alas, poor Yorick, I knew his skull, Horatio, that famous image of Hamlet. It is the most comic scene in the play and contains the most serious points, because the grave diggers talk about the social situation and institutions that they are in. They find that the religion and the state seem to favor the wealthy or the well-positioned rather than ordinary people. But death itself, for them, death is the great equalizer, because it brings all men and all people before it. Besides, as we know, grave digging is a serious undertaking and shouldn't be joked about. Death, of course, is waiting one scene away for Hamlet. That's the pattern to this play of comedy and tragedy. They alternate back and forth. If there's something incredibly tragic or dark, comedy is waiting in one scene either side of it. And then the same way with anything that's particularly funny, tragedy is right beside it like its twin. But this particular moment forces a change in Hamlet, and he drops his mask of antic disposition. He no longer pretends that he is mad because his emotions sort of demand it. At the death of Ophelia, he realizes that she has been the great love of his life, and now he has lost her irrevocably and lost his father to death, and it appears he has lost his mother to Claudius. And then his emotions get the better of him, and he jumps into her open grave and fights with her brother Laertes. And Laertes is also now on a course of revenge, because Hamlet has killed his father and is really responsible for the death of his sister, and there they are fighting in the grave of this beautiful young girl. Whew. Heady, heady stuff. That's why Hamlet needs a detectable sense of humor in this play. All this death, this madness, real or faked, the talk of mortality and suicide. First of all, as an audience member, do you want to spend 3 hours with somebody that emo? No, we need someone who can bring us humor, who can bring us that sense of humor, that ability to get through life, those emotional tools. And Hamlet needs whatever grasp on dark comedy he has, or he really will go mad, I think. And he ends up plotting the deaths of his friends, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. But he is able to bring about the death of the king, Claudius, who has murdered his father. He is able to, spoiler alert, get vengeance in his revenge tragedy, overcoming circumstances that are difficult and achieving a happy ending. Yeah, he dies right after, but it's happy while it lasts. Hamlet is a comedy. We need both comedy and tragedy to balance each other out. You know, the story of the king who asked for someone to bring him something that will make him happy when he is sad and sad when he is happy, and someone brings him a ring on which is engraved, "This too shall pass." Both of those things in this play, or Hamlet wouldn't be able to wake it through as long as he does. Comedy, tragedy, life, and death. These are the things that make up this play, and these are the things that bring me full circle of life. Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We do have a few minutes if you have any questions.
Yeah, I've often thought sometimes Hamlet is mad throughout the entire play, and his father's ghost is just a manifestation of his madness.
The idea of Hamlet actually being mad and the father ghost being a manifestation of that, there have been productions that actually have done that. There was one notable one that I'm aware of where Hamlet would speak and then he would sort of channel his father's ghost. No, the ghost is a separate character, I think. So I don't really agree with that interpretation so much. But Hamlet himself gives you clues. He gives textual evidence that he is making this up and putting it on. It seems at certain points later on that he does sort of slip into a sort of madness, but he doesn't start out that way, certainly. So it's possible.
One of my favorite parts is after the play within a play. They always say he can't make up his mind, but Claudius is trying to pray, although he's not successfully praying. And Hamlet thinks he is praying, so...
Well, is everyone else hearing that? Right, he doesn't want to kill him he doesn't want to kill Claudius while he's praying, because Claudius would be in a state of grace. There's a real tension through a lot of this play between, among Catholicism on the one hand, Protestantism and paganism, because they all seem to be fighting with each other through different characters in this play, and sometimes the same characters at different moments. So that's one of them that comes out as more Catholic. Anyone else? Other questions? That was just your hair? Okay. Yes?
So, I'm a novice with Shakespeare.
Novices are welcome.
Thank you. So what should I be doing to make just a couple themes or something?
Thematically, what to pay attention to? Well, first of all, when the language becomes the most poetic, that's when the least action is really happening. So you can kind of zone out and just enjoy how pretty the language is. That's what I tend to do with Hamlet especially. He's got a lot of philosophy to him, but some of it matters, not very much of it. But whenever they talk about revenge, or vengeance, or becoming an avenger, or the Marvel Universe, I guess, those are the things to really pay attention to, because that's what's driving the plot forward. And any mention of love. Love doesn't get a lot of play in this play. It only comes up, I think, fewer than 30 times, if I remember correctly. But it's, when it's mentioned, it's always important. So vengeance and love. Yes?
You piqued my curiosity when you talked about Hamlet being a tragedy without a fool. And I was remembering Yorick as being the king's fool in life. And what does that say about him? Because the fool speaks truth to the king, there came a time that he died and was not replaced, so there wasn't any truth happening in the kingdom.
The idea that by not having a fool character, because Yorick, the court jester, is already dead, I think that speaks to the bond between Hamlet and Yorick that he brings out later, which cements his position of hero as fool. That he figures, if nobody else is going to do it, hey, I'm dressed in black. What else can I do? Anyone else? Yes, sir.
I just have one thing I'd like your comment on.
Yes.
I recently read an essay on how at least 20% of Shakespearean language is alien to us now. We either can't understand it or we have to look at a footnote or something to understand what they're saying. And his contention is that we should try to modernize some of the parts of these plays so that they're more comprehensible to people. What's your feeling?
My opinion on altering the language to make it more accessible and more modern for people, no. Do a whole adaptation of the story. That's what Shakespeare did. He took stories that already existed and made them his own. So if you're going to do that, make it a whole your own story. You know, like turn, I don't know, Romeo and Juliet into street kids. One's Puerto Rican, one's Italian, or take Taming of the Shrew and set it at a high school and have somebody give a list of 10 things they hate about somebody, or reset Midsummer Night's Dream at an all-boys school, which is Were the World Mine, and have them do the play as part of the course. It's an adaptation, I think, is much better than just trying to modernize the language. I think for the most part, if you're willing to meet the actors halfway, and if they've done their work in understanding what the language is, there's really no problem with the vast majority of the language. So that's.
There's a lot of puns we don't get.
I've seen Shakespeare done so by very trained actors. Things just flowed on, the language just flowed out. I never questioned anything. I understood everything.
Like I said, if you meet it halfway and the actors have done their work, you have selected a fairly warm but now cooling evening to attend the theater. So good luck. Thank you very much for being here and have a good evening. Enjoy the show. Oh, thank you.